All right, friends, welcome back to Educator.com for another lesson in Intermediate C++. Today we will be overloading operators, sometimes known as operator overloading. Okay, operator overloading is one of the more powerful features of C++. There aren't many languages that let you actually do that. One real quick thing, you probably in other programming languages have seen operator overloading, but it just wasn't called that at the time. For example, A plus B, what plus does depends on whether A are integers or doubles or strings. And so based on, in Java, for example, if you have a string plus an integer, it will actually take the integer and convert it to a string for you and concatenate them together, which, it's real great. But C++ lets you actually define your own operator overloading. When you define your own class, you can say, well, an object of this class can be added to an instance of this other class. Now, having said that, be warned, you should not always overload, particularly for the arithmetic operators. If you have a horse plus horse doesn't really make sense, so you really shouldn't do things like that. So we will discuss those considerations for and against overloading specific operators. Now, almost every operator in C++ can be overloaded. Now, we're not going to go through that whole list here. We're just going to take some of the more important ones, some of the more common ones that get overloaded frequently. Some that are very useful to be overloaded, and others that are only useful to overload if you have a specific type of class. So in doing this, we will discuss a custom object designed for this class for demonstrating this specific issue, which is not really a big deal. It's not a large class, but it's something that we can use when you see that instead of having T every place or type every place, we'll actually have the name of our class that we've designed for this particular overloading discussion. So we will overload the assignment operator. That's like where A equals B. The assignment operator is equals. We will discuss equality and inequality operators. Like if you say, if A is equal to B, that's an equality operator, as opposed to not equals, which is, of course, not equal. It's the opposite of equal. We'll discuss some there are other inequalities. This is an equality. This is not equality, but there's inequality would be like something is less than something. So we want to say if A is less than B. So we need to overload the operator less than for your specific class, because A is a type of class and B is a type of class, and then is A less than B, you need to define that operator for that operation. And of course, arithmetic operators. You have A plus B multiplied by B, divided by B, minus B. You want to go so far, you take the remainder, modular. All these operators can be overloaded. The I/O operators are very important because very often you want to build a class, you want to output it. So you'll overload the output operator. You want to get the data back. Overload the other operator. So the array operators and function operators, which may seem a little odd to think of these as operators, but in C++, these are considered operators. So you have your square brackets is an operator. It's an array operator, subscript operator. And then the round brackets, it's a function operator, which can be overloaded. You can have a class and refer to the class using something that looks like a function. If you've got some process or some functionality that behaves like a function, you can overload that operator for your class objects and then use it as if it were a function. Now, when not to overload operators, not every class lends itself to operator overloading. It's certainly not for arithmetic operators, not for all of the dozens of operators that exist in C++. Not all of them will make sense. Because one of the things when you're going to overload an operator, the semantics and syntax And the sense of what that operator does should be preserved. Otherwise, you will confuse your readers. So for example, let's say you have a trailer object, and then you have a horse object. So you say, hey, I've got an idea. When we're running the process of adding the horse to the trailer, let's use the plus sign. No, trailer plus horse doesn't make sense. Now, yes, there's a way, you want to say we want to add this horse to the trailer. Just make a method called add, or put horse in, or whatever you want to call it. But that is not the way to do that. If you're going to use things like plus and minus, etc., you should have a numeric type of class. A class is typically treated as if it was a number. Even though it may have lots of numbers inside, it may have tons and tons of data within it, it is conceptually a number. For example, we've got complex numbers. Those of you familiar with the engineering and science know what a complex number is. Directional vectors can be added together. A mathematical matrix, where you have a matrix which you add two matrices together, you can multiply them, you can invert them, all types of various things. So for those types of classes, yeah, overload your plus sign and minus sign, whatever. But don't try to define horse plus horse, please. It'll just add confusion. So even when it seems to be sort of like you're adding something to something, such as adding the horse to the trailer, just make an add method for that particular class. Don't overload the plus unless it really is a numeric class. So you're adding objects to containers. You have a list container. You notice there's no plus overload for any of the standard library list containers or vector containers. So it may seem cute. Yeah, we're going to overload the not operator. We're going to overload the tilde operator. We're going to do this. But no, don't be cute, because that will cause hours of debugging later on, because when people read the code, they're not going to understand what you're doing. And those hours that you might save might be yours when you have to go back to your program later, figure out what were you thinking 6 months ago.